Chapter 11 The First Conflict with the King. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thank you, Prince. After receiving the little prince's guarantee, Alex sincerely thanked him and led the two of them into the camp. The two children stayed away all night, and Viserys was angry and disappointed. Not only was he disappointed in his children, but he was also disappointed in himself. As a king, it is his incompetence for his ministers to start a war privately. As a father, it is useless for him to discipline his children improperly. After a night of enlightenment from Queen Alicent, Viserys rarely revealed his true feelings and decided to do something. When Rhaegar walked into the king's tent, he saw Viserys sitting on the throne, looking around. None of the dignitaries who celebrated yesterday were gone, even Nobushij's ministers were not among them. "Father, I'm back." Facing his unhappy father, Rhaegar took the initiative to say hello. Viserys ignored him, and his cold eyes fell on Illich, who followed him. "White Knight, tell your king, what is the crime of leading the prince out of the camp without permission?" Illich knelt down, feeling uneasy in his heart. "Your Majesty, it must be treason." "Very good. You still remember the laws of the kingdom. I thought you had stopped taking it seriously." Viserys laughed in anger. "Come here, pull this traitor down and chop off his head." He was really angry. Daemon and the sea serpent started a war without telling him. The ministers did not recognize his designated successor. The daughter who loves her wholeheartedly does not understand her old father's good intentions. It was good now that even the White Knight who swore loyalty dared to go against his wishes, sneaking his sick eldest son deep into the royal forest. What does he want to do? What else is there not to do? If the punishment is not severe, the princes and ministers will follow suit one by one in the future, which will put the king's majesty at risk. Following Viserys' order, footsteps were heard outside the camp. Eric closed his eyes as if resigned to his fate. He knew that the guard at the door was coming to judge him. Alec, who had been guarding the king's head, changed his face slightly and secretly winked at Rhaegar. Although it was a disgrace to the honor of his white robe, the little prince was indeed his brother's only life-saving straw at the moment. Rhaegar did not break his promise. As soon as Viserys gave the order, he immediately stood in front of Illich. Pretending to be confused, he said, "Father, why should Sir Eric be punished? There must be some misunderstanding." Viserys didn't give him a good look and scolded, "Shut up, don't think that you can stay out of it because I didn't mention you. I already knew what happened from the groom who fed the horse. You have an unshirkable responsibility for Illich's fate." Rhaegar's expression froze, but he didn't expect that his little trick would be seen through. The guard walked into the tent, neatly took off Illich's white robe, and disarmed his sword. "Stop, you can't do this to him." Rhaegar couldn't care less. He opened his hand to protect Illich, who was kneeling on one knee, blocking the guards from taking him into custody. "You are so outrageous. Do you also want to go against your father's will?" Viserys shouted angrily and ordered the guards to take Rhaegar down. "Let me go. There is no reason to detain me in front of my father." Rhaegar struggled to break away. The guards did not dare to hurt the king's heir, so they could only hold down Illich, who had no resistance. "Prince, please don't anger the king anymore." Seeing that the situation was getting more and more intense, Illich, who was tied up, spoke up in a deep voice. He was unwilling to detonate the king's wrath of the sleeping dragon for the sake of himself, the one being judged. He was not naive enough to expect a young prince to save him. "On the way back, I thought about what would happen. I said, I will bear all the consequences, and Targaryen will do what he says." Rhaegar knocked aside the guard blocking the way, stepped forward quickly, and faced his father with an angry look on his face. He said loudly, "Father, I have recovered from my illness, and Sir Eric has contributed a lot to it." Viserys sneered, "I only knew that Illich was a knight, but I never knew that he could learn herbology. Believe me, there is a white deer in the royal forest. It gave me a fruit full of blessings and restored my health." With emotions reaching a peak, Rhaegar dropped bombshell news in an attempt to reverse Illich's decision. Hearing about the white deer, Viserys had a flash of suspicion in his eyes. "A white deer cured your disease with a fruit." Just yesterday, Prime Minister Leonor reported to him that a white deer was found in the royal forest. Jace Lannister also presented a golden spear, hoping to use the weapon he gave to hunt the white deer. He indeed went into the royal forest to hunt under the protection of everyone. but I didn't see any white deer, I only hunted an ordinary antlered deer. The eldest son had left the camp before then and would not have known about it, so, what he said about meeting the white deer is probably true. Rhaegar didn't know that his father was thinking a lot for a moment, and he affirmed, yes, the white deer is all white. I gave it fruit, and it gave it a fruit that can cure me. At the end, he reminded, we are friends. Haha, that's the best joke I've heard all year. Viserys shook his head and laughed, not believing the eldest son's story, which became increasingly outrageous. Rhaegar looked determined. Sir Illich can vouch for me. You can also ask the accompanying bachelor to diagnose me. I guarantee that my body is recovering. Viserys was moved by his confident words. He turned his gaze to the silent Illich and said in surprise. Illich, tell your king the truth before you take off your armor. Illich, Prince, everything you say is true. Viserys nodded slightly, lowered his head and remained silent. No one knows what he is thinking at this moment. There was a brief silence in the camp, and everyone's breathing could be heard clearly. After a while, Viserys looked at Alec and asked, do you think what Rhaegar and your brother said is true? I trust my brother as you trust your children, your majesty. Alec did not hesitate and firmly vouched for his brother. Viserys said no more and ordered, go and call the accompanying bachelors, including the doctors brought by other nobles and knights. None of them are left behind. As you wish. Alec's voice was loud. He opened the door curtain and walked out quickly. This incident relieved the originally anxious atmosphere. The guards looked at each other and consciously divided into two sides and stood at attention. Rhaegar asked Viserys, Father, do you believe me? If it can make you healthy, I hope what I say is true. Before the matter came to an end, Viserys was relatively restrained and looked at his young eldest son. In fact, he already believed Rhaegar's words a little. The Grand Maester had told Rhaegar 2 months ago after his usual checkup. The prince's heart failure is severe. If it continues to worsen, it will be difficult for him to live past the age of 10. He asked if there was a cure. Unfortunately, organ failure is a terminal disease in this day and age. Let alone cure it, it cannot even alleviate it. He originally thought that his eldest son would die soon, so he avoided meeting him. As the father of this child, even if he is a king, he does not have the courage to face it calmly. But, just now, the way Rhaegar argued with him surprised him. Although the familiar little face is still pale, but the sound it made was full of energy, the momentum that bursts out from his whole body, the courage that his words carry. He is indeed a descendant of ancient Valyria. Chapter 12, A Song of Ice and Fire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alec, eager to save his brother, did not keep the king waiting. In just 10 minutes, a large group of people were brought to the main tent. Viserys spoke to calm the uneasy maesters and healers, and ordered them to examine Rhaegar. A full-body examination from top to bottom, not missing a hair. Maesters familiar with Rhaegar were familiar with this. From time to time some of them assisted the Grand Maester in examining the frail prince. After preparing the equipment to be used, the bachelors took the lead and started taking action. The inspection process is simple and crude. First, bleed and observe the color and viscosity of the blood, even put a leech in to taste the blood to see if it contains toxins. The rest are playing various tricks. Massage the whole body with big hands, observe the skin, teeth, hair roots. Only if you can't think of it, this group of medical students can't do it. What's more, a skinny old man proposed to take off Rhaegar's pants and spread his buttocks to check his anus. As a father, Viserys also acquiesced in this behavior. Rhaegar was horrified and regretted his reckless decision to let his body be examined. Fortunately, under Rhaegar's strong resistance, Eric took action. He punched the skinny old man's nose and begged the king not to let anyone persecute the prince's soul. Even if I are hanged, the prince should not be humiliated. Rhaegar almost peed with fright, hiding behind Illich and shivering. Viserys did not reprimand Illich for making arbitrary decisions, but waved away some incompetent healers. A few decent bachelors were left alone to report on Rhaegar's physical condition. A royal bachelor was the first to speak, with undisguised surprise. Your Majesty, the prince's health has indeed improved greatly, and his blood activity is much higher than usual. The other bachelors also spoke one after another. The prince suffers from breathing difficulties. This deep breathing test was very standard and there was no murmur in the cavity. The color of the urine is normal, light yellow but not turbid, the taste is slightly tangy, and the kidneys recover quickly. After a good report, Viserys was stunned for a while. The guards were ordered to take these bachelors back and they were all rewarded with gold coins. For a time, only the Viserys father and son and the Cargill brothers were left in the camp. Rhaegar was the first to speak, as the maester said, "My illness is cured, thanks to Sir Illich's help. He helped you, and I will give him a lighter sentence." Viserys was truly happy for his eldest son and said with emotion, "I'm glad that you can be healthy. I will not be speechless when I see your mother in heaven in the future. Father, I can't say anything to comfort you on behalf of my mother. I just hope you can look forward." Speaking of his mother who died in childbirth, Rhaegar felt a little uncomfortable. Rumors are like the cold wind of the 12th lunar month. Not only does it hurt like a knife, it is also seamless and does not drill. It can always reach the ears of the people you want to blow to. Viserys felt guilty for forcing his wife to get pregnant for many years, leading to her death, as a newborn born in difficult labor. Rhaegar was not a factor in his mother's death. When he was young, he heard those exaggerated rumors, and he also felt guilty in his heart. Seeing his eldest son's forlorn expression, Viserys felt a pang in his heart, knowing that he had aroused his sadness. "Alec, I want to have a heart-to-heart talk with my son. You and your brother should retreat and don't let anyone get close to the tent." Viserys ordered the Cargill brothers out. "Do not worry." Alec looked solemn and dragged his brother to guard outside the tent. Without any interruption from outsiders, Viserys stood up and came to Rhaegar's side, caressing his head lovingly. "Were you frightened just now?" "What?" Rhaegar looked confused. Viserys smiled evilly and said, "Dr. Polis, that old man who wants to take off your pants." Rhaegar's face turned green. "I remember this name. Haha, those in power should have a broad mind, especially towards the doctor who prepares your medicine." Viserys taught half seriously and half jokingly. "That's your master's intrigue. I just want to blow his head off." Rhaegar would not listen to so-called magnanimity. It wasn't the king's turn to be held down and his pants removed. "If what happened about white deer is true, did you really recover from eating a magical fruit?" As the words changed, Viserys thought of the fruit mentioned by his eldest son. He was cut by the Iron Throne, and the wound never healed no matter what method he used. In the past 10 years, his body has been scarred and festered in many places. The pain kept tickling his nerves. If Bailu really has that magical fruit, which may be able to heal his body, Rhaegar naturally knew why his father asked this question. "I didn't tell lies. The white deer is willing to get close to me and feed me the fruits that restore my health." Viserys looked happy. "Then can you still find the white deer?" Rhaegar was straightforward. "That magical fruit is very difficult. It is difficult to get a second one. Even if you find the white deer, it will be useless." "How do you know if you haven't tried?" Viserys refused to give up hope of a cure. Rhaegar did not want to betray his friends and insisted, "The white deer is auspicious, and those close to it will reap blessings. On the contrary, anyone who dares to harm it will be cursed." Viserys stared at Rhaegar suspiciously, trying to read any clues in his expression. Rhaegar's expression remained normal, looking at him calmly. After a while, Viserys gave up. He sighed and said, "You're right, I went hunting white deer yesterday and didn't even see a shadow." Rhaegar was very surprised. He didn't expect this to happen. Viserys stroked the top of his head. "You are luckier than me to gain the friendship of the white deer." Rhaegar said nothing. He didn't know what to say. The white deer is his friend and he cannot betray it. Moreover, the fruit is a reward issued by explorers, not owned by Bailu. Even if he helped his father catch the white deer, there would be no second fruit to cure his illness. Viserys looked pleased, but there was something else in his heart. The white deer is a symbol of royal power, but as a king, he had no chance to meet it. Rhaegar was able to see it. It was not just as simple as luck. Despite all his thoughts, Viserys warned himself, "It is a rare good thing that your son encounters an adventure." Thinking of this, Viserys had an idea in his heart. He took Rhaegar's hand and walked to the brazier in the tent. In Rhaegar's puzzled eyes, he pulled out the dragonhorn dagger from his waist and put the blade into the fire. When the blade forged from Valyrian steel is completely heated and turns red, hold the dragon's horn handle and take it out. Place it in front of Rhaegar's eyes. "Look carefully, what do you see?" Viserys' encouraging prompts. Rhaegar looked at the red dagger and found that many tiny characters appeared under the flames. Old Valyrian. Proficient in the Old Valyrian language, he quickly discerned its meaning. considering that he had not yet learned Old Valyrian. Rhaegar did not dare to reveal too much. He stumbled and read, Prophecy. Bloodline, Song of Ice and Fire. Further back, Rhaegar pretended to be speechless and looked helplessly at Viserys. Viserys was not surprised, but surprised that he could recognize part of the Old Valyrian language. It seemed that the news he got was correct. Rhaegar was indeed a child who loved reading. Chapter 13 Specious Answer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is the prophecy of a Song of Ice and Fire. Viserys explained patiently, before Aegon died, the last fire wizard in Valyria hid his song in a dagger. Knowing this is a responsibility and a heavy burden. More important than the throne and the king, as he spoke, he watched Rhaegar's every move. Under the bright firelight, the shadows of the father and son were lengthened and enlarged. As the wind blows the flames, they twist and change. Rhaegar blinked and was at a loss. A Song of Ice and Fire. I thought this was a superstition made up in the book. He does know a Song of Ice and Fire. When I was exploring this dragonhorn dagger, the system prompt mentioned that the Song of Ice and Fire was recorded in the dagger, and the relics obtained from the exploration are called the Warning of the Sages. Now it seems that it has profound meaning, Viserys said solemnly. The prophecy is real. I hope you can keep it in your heart and always be wary of the unknown darkness and cold winter. I will, Father. Rhaegar didn't know what was going on, but he realized what was at stake. Viserys walked around the brazier and hesitated. I once asked Rhaegar a question. Do you want to know what it is? What is it? That what his father said became more and more profound. Rhaegar couldn't understand it and subconsciously asked questions. About dragons, thoughts on dragons. At this point, Viserys had no reason to stop and continued. Dragons are ancient creatures that have followed the Targaryen family since ancient Valyria. They are great but flawed. What do you think of this? Rhaegar shook his head. My dragon eggs haven't hatched yet, and my sister refused to take me on a dragon ride. The closest thing I have to a dragon is Balerian's skull. As a Targaryen, he has his own dragon eggs, from a giant dragon called Dreamfire. Rhaegar personally selected him from the dragon's lair before he was born. After so many years, the dragon egg showed no sign of hatching. Viserys didn't care about this and emphasized, it doesn't matter, you just need to tell me what you think about dragons. Looking at his father's serious expression, Rhaegar knew this was important. Think back to Balerian's massive skull. Even without scales and flesh, the pressure brought by facing the skull is still strong, and the dragon egg that belongs to him, baked in a special oven, it is not afraid of high temperatures and has a firm texture. It is very different from the bird eggs and chicken eggs I have seen. Finally there is Rhaegar. She was able to fly with a dragon at the age of 7 and became a dragon knight. Every time I see her and be intimate with her, Rhaegar could smell the faint smell of sulfur. He knew that it was the smell of dragon. After pondering for a while, Rhaegar organized his words and replied, the dragon is the most powerful controllable weapon in the world. Even though Aegon the Conqueror had amazing wisdom and courage, he rode on the back of a dragon to unify the 7 kingdoms. Dragons are dangerous, but only by harnessing them can a Targaryen rise above ordinary men. Otherwise, you will surely fall from the Iron Throne. This is what he means. This is also the most objective view he can give at the moment. After listening carefully, Viserys showed a hint of relief on his face and asked again, if one day you ride a dragon and face the rebellion of the disrespectful ones, how should you deal with it? Burn them. Rhaegar spat out this sentence without thinking. You said dragons were dangerous. Viserys frowned. Rhaegar didn't realize anything was wrong, but without the dragon, Targaryen's majesty will not be able to intimidate Xiao Xiao. When necessary, dragon flames will destroy those who disobey, leaving only one voice in Westeros. Viserys fell silent upon hearing his eldest son's will. Subjectively, Rhaegar was right. The reason why the Targaryen family can become the kings of the 7 kingdoms is that the help of dragons is indispensable, but when I think of the prophecies of a Song of Ice and Fire, he didn't want to rely too much on the dragon. Ancient Valyria could never satisfy her greed and desire because of her self-control in controlling the dragon. It brought about a natural disaster that would destroy the world. He thought of years ago, on the eve of the establishment of Rhaegar as heir. He asked the same question. Rhaegar's answer was not far removed from Rhaegar's original answer. but Rhaenyra had a more thorough understanding of the relationship between dragons and Targaryens. She doesn't think she can gain everything by riding a dragon. Her character is very similar to that of her father, Viserys. They both dislike war and are strict with themselves. On the other hand, Rhaegar's answer was similar to that of a person, Daemon Targaryen, his biological brother. To be honest, for a while, he considered making Daemon his heir. Put aside the disloyal and unjust things that Daemon did to himself, Daemon's views on dragons are very extreme. The dragon is the sword in his hand, the so-called sharp weapon is in hand, and the murderous intention arises, with this unparalleled weapon in his hand. Sooner or later he will be unable to restrain his desire and take the initiative to provoke a war. For some reason, Viserys felt jealous. With Rhaegar's puzzled expression, he said calmly, "I understand what you mean. Don't forget the prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. Go down and rest first." Rhaegar did not ask further questions and said sensibly, "Okay, you should drink less, father." Viserys smiled kindly and watched him walk out of the camp. The faces were blurred against the dim firelight. After leaving the camp, the midday sun hit my face. Rhaegar was so stung that he couldn't open his eyes. A shadow covered him, blocking him from the dazzling light. "Sir Alec." Rhaegar tilted his head and saw clearly the person blocking the light. Alec held his white robe over the little prince's head with one hand and said sincerely, "Thank you for interceding for my brother, Prince." Rhaegar shook his head slightly. "Don't say that. I coerced Illich to take me out of the camp. He shouldn't take the responsibility for me. The king's guard followed the king's orders. My brother failed in his duty. It was a grave mistake." Alec was a very clever man, aware of the prince's position in the king's heart, and respected him very much. "Where's Ser Illich?" Rhaegar changed the topic. Alec said, "There was a commotion at Inco just now. He went to check the situation. If it's lively, I'll go and see it too." Rhaegar became interested and did not forget to warn, "My father is still inside, sir, please pay more attention. The duty lies." Alec raised his hand in salute. Away from the king's tent, Rhaegar did not immediately go to see the excitement. First, we picked through the various snacks and barbecue tables and ate until we were 7 to 7 cents full. On the way early in the morning, he only drank a few sips of water. Pity him, this motherless child. "Rhaegar." As they were waiting around a barbecue grill, Rhaenyra's voice came from behind. Rhaegar turned his head, startled. At this moment, Rhaenyra was covered in blood, and her silver hair was dyed black with dried blood, as if she had just experienced a fight. "Rhaenyra, how could you do this?" Rhaegar couldn't care less about eating meat, so he ran forward with his short legs. "I looked for you yesterday, but unfortunately I couldn't find you." Rhaenyra knocked on his head and threatened, "You have to call me sister. Rhaenyra is not the one you should call, and you shouldn't run around. You still don't care what those fake tricks are doing. Where are you injured? Is it serious?" Rhaegar looked at her injuries worriedly. Rhaenyra pushed him away and said calmly, "This is not my blood. I am not injured." Chapter 14 Bonecrusher How Winstrong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 14 Bonecrusher How Winstrong. A wild boar attacked me and I killed it. Rhaenyra rubbed Rhaegar's head, a hint of pride in her tone. "Wow, heroic pig hunting lady." Rhaegar said this out of nowhere in his mind. Rhaenyra's face turned dark instantly. Just as Rhaegar was suffering the wrath of his sister's sleeping dragon, a voice interrupted the intimacy between the two siblings. "Princess, I heard that you dealt with a wild boar by yourself." A voice came from the grill. The two siblings looked at each other at the same time and saw a strong man with brown curly hair and a thick beard. From the other person's facial features, Rhaegar felt a little familiar, but the two sides have never met. Rhaenyra knew the other party and smiled politely. "It's just a fluke, Ser Harwinstrong." Hearing the name Strong, Rhaegar suddenly understood, realized where the familiarity comes from, the Larry Strong that made him feel uncomfortable. Rhaenyra noticed his expression and whispered, "He is the eldest son of Prime Minister Leonor, a very famous knight, known as the Bonebreaker. Bonecrusher. He will break the bones of his enemies." Rhaegar asked half-jokingly. Harwin skinned a pigeon and answered with a smile, "That's right, during a battle, I used a war hammer to smash an unlucky man's skull. The people who survived gave me the nickname Bonecrusher." "Awesome," it seems you are really a powerful warrior. Rhaegar responded calmly, and it was not difficult to hear the pride in the other person's tone. A knight with such an intimidating title is indeed proud of himself. After cleaning the pigeons quickly, Harwin took a rag and wiped his hands, and stepped forward to joke. My barbecue skills are good. I just saw that the prince ate a lot. I wonder if the princess would like to enjoy it. As he spoke, this tall, strong man spoke humorously and had an easygoing temperament. It's hard to imagine that he would smash people's heads on the battlefield. Facing the invitation from this handsome knight, Rhaegar smiled apologetically and declined. No, my father is still waiting for me. No one can say no to the king. It doesn't matter. I will serve in King's Landing for a long time in the future. If the princess wants to taste my craftsmanship, you are welcome to visit at any time. Harwin was very sensible, showing a friendly attitude without being overly attentive. Rhaegar saw something in him, respect. Of course the older Rhaegar could see that too, a little unaccustomed. He put his hands behind his back and smiled more sincerely. Yes, sir. Harwin smiled and saluted and stopped interrupting. This move made Renée even more favorable. Looking at his somewhat excited sister, Rhaegar felt confused and curled his lips. I'm leaving to see my father. You can wander around casually. Rhaenyra still had to see Viserys, so she hurried away without any time to talk. At this time, many princes and nobles gathered in the camp and noticed the princess covered in blood. The noisy scene suddenly quieted down, and everyone remained quiet. Rhaenyra resented the scrutiny. He walked by with a cold face, meeting eyes with some people from time to time. Most of the time, the princess's momentum will overwhelm others. The man with a guilty conscience lowered his head, not daring to look at him. Rhaenyra curled her lips slightly, despising those who were timid. Looking at the back of everyone's attention, Rhaegar pursed his lips, seeming to feel the loneliness from it. The royal forest hunt is over. Viserys immediately got into the carriage and returned to King's Landing with his family. In view of the wrong behavior of the sister and brother leaving the camp without authorization, the father punished them respectively. The princess is old enough to get married, but she doesn't like the person the king has chosen. Viserys spent a lot of money to organize a tour of the continent specifically for Rhaenyra. On the surface, Rhaenyra, as the heir, was asked to visit the lords of various realms to strengthen the relationship between the vassals and her, show the majesty of the Targaryen royal family. In fact, this is indeed the case. Since becoming the heir, Rhaenyra usually just observes government affairs, no real power. Heir is not familiar with the lord who swore an oath to her. Viserys this time is to increase Rhaenyra's presence and make the vassals better accept the heir. While achieving this purpose, martial arts tournaments and banquets will also be held in various places. Take the opportunity to help Rhaenyra find a marriage partner. From Viserys' point of view, Rhaenyra didn't like his choice, so let her choose. You can choose from great guys from all over the country. Believe it or not, no one can take notice. This shows how much this father attaches great importance to his daughters. Marriage. The eldest daughter's problem was solved, and the eldest son Rhaegar had an easier time. Viserys used the excuse of recuperation and ordered Rhaegar to continue to live in the Red Keep and was not allowed to leave the gate of the Red Keep. For this reason, several bachelors were sent to check his body regularly, confirm whether the frailty is completely cured. Personal freedom was restricted, so Rhaegar naturally refused. After some arguments, Viserys believed that his eldest son had reached the age of enlightenment. He also sent 2 old bachelors to teach him how to read and write. The hardship began when I was forced to wake up at 6 o'clock every day, attend cultural classes for 8 hours, and check my homework the next day. Rhaegar's whole body was numb. Viserys didn't think of him as a child recovering from a serious illness. Adhere to the attitude of learning. If you can't die, then learn to death. Under this kind of cramming education, Rhaegar's originally pale face improved, but the dark circles under my eyes are getting heavier day by day, even worse than before. Damn Maester, damn Old Town Academy, sooner or later I will get back what I lost. Faced with the tough education from the 2 old bachelors, Rhaegar made up his mind while practicing calligraphy. Rhaegar asked when Viserys would be free again. The answer I got was, "When will sister you return to King's Landing, and when will you walk out of the Red Keep?" Therefore, Rhaegar missed Rhaenyra extremely deeply. He misses his sister so much. Come back quickly. Time flies. Half a year has passed. King's Landing welcomes late autumn when the autumn leaves turn yellow, as a city by the sea, Junland's climate has not changed much, but the farmers in the fields have become busier. Rhaegar got good news in the Red Keep. The sister he had been waiting for day and night was coming back. Rhaenyra ended her travels early and boarded a ship to sail from the Stormlands. She would be back in King's Landing in a few days. No matter what others thought, Rhaegar was extremely happy. As soon as the classes ended every day, I would sit in front of the glass window in the attic of the Red Fort and look out at the sea, looking forward to seeing Rhaenyra's returning ship. It's great. My sister is finally coming back. My hard life is finally over. Rhaegar felt sad for what he had experienced over the past 6 months. He likes to read, but that was a last resort way to pass the time when I was weak and had no other activities. It's not like studying behind closed doors like a prison. Prince, you'd better not say this nonsense. The king was very angry when he heard the news that the princess returned without authorization. Another voice came from the attic. Rhaegar knew who it was without looking. Illich, dressed in silver armor and white robes, stood in front of another window, his posture upright like a spear. Sir, you don't know my daily life, don't you feel sad for me? Rhaegar said sullenly. Illich couldn't help but laugh. The king does expect you to gain knowledge, but 8 hours of class plus after-school homework is indeed a bit inhumane. Chapter 15 Dreamfire's Egg. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Those two old bastards are simply murdering a young prince. When he mentioned this, Rhaegar felt very nervous and wanted to smash the shriveled heads of the two old maesters, see if it contains not only knowledge, but also a bunch of answers. Eric smiled and said nothing, not interested in interfering with the king's teaching arrangements for the prince. Since the hunting in the royal forest half a year ago, the two of them had had little contact, until a few days ago. Viserys learned of the end of Rhaenyra's travels, then he sent Illich to Rhaegar and swore to protect the safety of the king's eldest son and complete all the tasks assigned to him. Rhaegar didn't know his father's intentions, but with a reliable white knight by your side, why not? In addition to sharing weal and woe before, the two got along very well. A strict knight like Illich could make harmless jokes with Rhaegar from time to time. I'm tired, Jazz. After sitting for a while, Rhaegar lost his patience and returned to the room followed by Illich. The king's guard are responsible only for the safety of the king and those he designates. There was nothing that would not enter the prince's chamber, but just stay outside the door. When Rhaegar returned to his den, he was the first to come to the fireplace. There is a furnace-like container placed there. Opening the lid of the stove, a burst of hot air hit my face. Rhaegar faced the heat wave without feeling any strange. He stretched out his head and looked into the stove. There was a dragon egg that was completely black and covered with diamond patterns. This is his dragon egg. Touching the hot surface of the dragon egg with his hand, Rhaegar's eyes flashed with disappointment, and he sighed. There is still no movement. When will the dragon hatch? Maybe it's just bad luck. Rhaegar's egg never showed any sign of hatching, and sat like a stone in its container for 6 years. I am used to stroking the dragon egg and talking to myself. Rhaegar thought this would help the eggs hatch. After chatting until he was thirsty, Lei Jia closed the lid of the container and ended today's dragon egg communication. After pouring himself a cup of hot water, Rhaegar muttered to himself, fortunately, that idiot Aegon's dragon egg didn't hatch, otherwise it would be a huge shame. Rhaegar felt much better when he thought that his stupid brother hadn't hatched the dragon egg either. It's a pity that my dragon egg didn't hatch, but if the brother's dragon egg hatches, it will only be more worrying. The sun rises and the moon sets, and the days pass by. Rhaenyra finally returns to King's Landing. Viserys, who wanted to save face, did not come forward. As the queen, Aerys led the princes and ministers out of the city to greet him. The two of them seemed like close friends who had not seen each other for many years. They held their arms tightly and talked and laughed happily under the gaze of the subjects. Such a harmonious scene naturally caused the people to cheer and applaud. Rhaegar's ban was automatically lifted and he was also in the welcoming team, following the two women, watching their friendly exchanges. Rhaegar couldn't explain why, but felt uncomfortable in his heart. Pulling on Illich's white robe, Rhaegar asked secretly, "Are all women getting along like this?" Illich looked around to make sure. No one was paying attention to them, and lowered his voice. Mostly yes, the queen and princess are the eldest among women, so they are more terrifying. Because of power. But my sister is already the heir. Rhaegar expressed his confusion. Illich shook his head. It is taboo to make irresponsible remarks about members of the royal family. I can only say that you should be careful. I will also be hurt, but I have no intention of involving the throne. Rhaegar asked. I don't know, but as the old saying goes, you must be on guard against others. Illich said meaningfully. Rhaegar smiled, then please do your best to protect my safety, sir. The duty lies. There were many people and many eyes, so the two of them stopped talking and accompanied the two heroines this time to finish the trip. It wasn't until evening that everyone stepped into the gate of the Red Fort. Although angry at Rhaegar for taking the initiative to return home, Viserys did not embarrass his daughter. A grand banquet was held to wash away the dust for her. Rhaegar didn't like the noisy environment, so he ate some pastries and dishes hastily, and then left the table with the gift that Rhaegar had prepared for him. When Rhaegar returned home, the biggest beneficiary was Rhaegar. Not only can you get out of the Red Fort and take a walk, but the daily classes have also been slashed. Instead of studying for 8 hours, you only need to study for 3 hours in the morning, and the rest of the time is free for your activities. Even after school homework has been cancelled. In response, Rhaegar shouted long live and couldn't be happier. When Rhaegar visited him, he kissed her twice. Days like this lasted for a while, then, the Red Fort became lively again. King and Queen Alicent's 5th wedding anniversary. In order to thank Alicent for his 5 years of companionship, Viserys waved his hand and decided to hold a grand tourney, prepare to invite all nobles and knights across the country to participate. Generous rewards are also prepared for the champions. Encourage that group of passionate young people to actively sign up and bring him a wonderful collision of blood and iron. Regardless of whether Alicent liked it or not, Viserys loved this kind of competition. Thanks to a good grandfather, the former King Jaehaerys accumulated a lot of wealth for the treasury. Viserys hosted banquets and justs. The servants in the Red Keep have long been accustomed to it, and under Alicent's management, they organized the tournament beautifully. Not long after, the King and Queen's 5th anniversary came. The tournament was as prosperous as expected, and the hotels in King's Landing were full of people. Rumor has it that some brothels have also seen a huge increase in business. The prostitutes couldn't close their legs when receiving customers, and many aristocratic gentlemen were even willing to fight bloody battles just to sweat. That day, Alicent prepared a sumptuous banquet. The guests enjoyed the brutal contest with Viserys. When they got tired of watching, they ate and drank in the nearby banquet hall. It was so happy. Rhaegar and Rhaenyra sat under Viserys' seat, watching the contest below. The court is where the cavaliers charge. 2 knights, wearing armor and holding sharp lances, charged head-on on war horses. As the charges clashed, a black-armored knight raised his spear and accurately stabbed the opponent's shoulder. Boom! Under the huge inertia, the knight on the opposite side was instantly carried away. His body drew a parabola in mid-air, and he fell heavily on the muddy field. When he landed, the knight under the armor screamed, and one leg was pinned under his but in a twisted posture. As he rolled and howled, Rhaegar noticed that only one arm was waving. The arm on the other side that was hit hung down limply. 80% of the time, the shoulder blade was shattered. If not treated in time, it will leave a lifelong disability in the future. Illich, who was standing behind him, explained to him in a low voice. Rhaegar had never seen such a scene, and couldn't bear it. If the treatment is not timely, he will also become disabled, and the leg will be useless. That's how competition is. The important thing is to determine the winner. Illich persuaded Rhaegar to accept the cruelty of reality. It's hard to imagine that a group of talented young people with martial arts skills are going to participate in a martial arts competition. How many of them can go back intact? Rhaegar was in a bad mood and did not understand the purpose of this contest. Illich said patiently, the kingdom is in a period of peace. Young people have nowhere to vent their passion. There are many people who want to win the king's attention. Rhaegar cannot hatch dragon eggs for the time being, so he will choose the path of training dragons. Guess what dragon the author arranged for him? The work was signed yesterday and an additional chapter was added. Chapter 16 The Dornishmen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You're right, sir. Rhaegar was speechless, but that didn't stop him from looking down on the bloody contest. Saying I'm hungry to Rhaenyra, he stood up and went straight to the banquet area. Watching the unnecessary fighting made him feel unappetized, and he was in urgent need of some fruit to relieve his tiredness. Eric shrugged and walked with him behind him. The charge session is over. There are still mounted shooting, melee, duel, After rounds of exciting and bloody competitions, we entered the duel stage. The rules are simple. 2 people wear armor and hold weapons in an unlimited competition, until one party surrenders or dies, commonly known as one-on-one. The first 2 duels are very exciting. The knights wield swords and hammers, and the scenes of gold and iron fighting are blood-soaking. Because the armor's protection is excellent, it will only cause injuries at most, but will not cause disability or even death. The people in the duel field are not fools, they came here for honor and gold. Since they have shown their faces in front of most nobles in the country, why do they have to fight to the death? As long as the fight is fierce enough, the nobles will cheer and win. They couldn't tell whether it was a real fight or a show. The third duel soon began. On one side is Bart Hammer Knight from Iron Oak City in the valley. This knight is tall, rough-looking, wearing silver-gray armor, holding a warhammer in one hand and a shield in the other. On the other side was a brown-skinned young man wearing light armor and holding a spear. It is not difficult to see that it should come from Dorn. It needs to be mentioned, although Aegon the Conqueror unified the 7 kingdoms, the Dornish people have never recognized submission to the Targaryen dynasty and have been rebelling all year round. It was not until a few years before Aegon I's death that Prince Martell of Dorne sent a representative and the 2 sides reached a reconciliation. At this point, the war between the Targaryens and the Dornish people came to an end. Of course, the war stopped, but the petty quarrels never stopped. The fierce Dornish people often plundered the surrounding areas, causing trouble to the whole kingdom. Looking at Dorne's face below, some interest finally arose in Rhaegar's boring heart. Unexpectedly, a Dornish warrior will participate in this tournament. Rhaegar looked at Cole, who was guarding him, and asked curiously, "Who do you think will win?" Cole laughed and said, "How can we tell the outcome before we fight? It is said that the Dornish people are ferocious and good at fighting. They are barbarians who drink blood from their hair. Do you know whether it is true or not?" Rhaegar looked forward to it with interest. The referee blew the horn and the duel began. Bart hid his face under his helmet, waving his war hammer and pressing forward step by step, not daring to relax. He had also heard the rumors about the Dornish people, brutal, ruthless. He didn't dare to take it lightly. Who knew if the other party would be cruel? In contrast, the Dornish youths were more natural. They were pacing back and forth with guns and knots on their arms, provoking words. "Silly man, why didn't you go to the blacksmith shop to forge? Don't waste your broken hammer." As he spoke, he darted left and right dexterously, constantly exerting psychological pressure on the opponent. Bart has never been on the battlefield, his psychological quality is inferior to others, and he cannot suppress his anger after being insulted. "Brown-skinned monkey, I hope your head is as hard as your mouth and you don't get smashed by a hammer." Taking advantage of the gap between the opponent's jumps, Bart stepped forward, swung his warhammer and swept across the waist, his momentum like a rainbow. The audience outside the venue watched intently, their eyes widened, expecting to see the exciting scene of blood splattering everywhere. "Idiot, you are too slow." The Dornish youth rolled on the spot and avoided the attack of the war hammer. He spread his legs to stop rolling, raised his hand and pierced the weak spot at the joint of Bart's leg armor, causing blood to spurt out immediately. "Ah! Damn the Dornish!" The pain aroused Bart's blood. He roared angrily, raised the war hammer and struck it down again. He would smash the heads of Dornish youths. Unfortunately, the Dornish youth is too flexible. The man moved his body like a donkey rolling, pulled out the spear with all his strength, and pierced the weak spot in Bart's lower back again. Poof! Suffering a penetrating wound to his waist, Bart stumbled to his knees, blood seeping from his armor. After a successful attack, the Dornish youth did not pursue the victory, but instead looked back and forth around Bart, who was unable to stand up. With a mocking look on his face, he said, "This knight from the valley, you seem to be very unfriendly to us Dornish people." Pulling out the spear from the opponent's wound, he continued while screaming, "You call me a brown-skinned monkey, then what are you valley people? Hairless goat." Bart struggled to get up, but was kicked down by the opponent. Humiliation filled his heart, and he shouted, "Despicable Dornishman, you have the guts to challenge me head-on, jumping around like a monkey. Ha ha ha, what a smart statement, allowing others to use their shortcomings to challenge their own strengths." The Dornish youth made no secret of his teasing. On the battlefield, do you also ask the enemy not to hide, Vale Goat? Damn you bastard, go to hell. Bart had already lost his mind, and while the other party was talking, he clenched his war hammer and swung it in a circular motion, trying to break the other party's ankle. How could the Dornish youth be so unprepared? With a slight jump, he evaded his long-planned sneak attack, and the tip of the gun penetrated Bart's right hand holding the hammer downwards. As soon as the gun was lifted, Bart's palm was cut off, and he wailed miserably, boom. As soon as the scream left his mouth, the Dornish young man raised his knee and pushed Bart's chin hard, forcing him to suppress his voice. Then, he took off his helmet, exposing his fragile head. The Dornish youth smiled cruelly, and under Bart's fearful eyes, kicked him in the mouth. His teeth were mixed with blood, and he could only let out a desperate whimper. His head was injured, and Bart fell completely to the ground, his body twitching slightly. The Dornish youth put a gun to his throat, looked around at the crowd outside the field, and shouted, "Look! What a brave knight of the valley, he will not surrender even to the death." As he spoke, his big feet wearing thick leather boots stepped on Bart's face, crushing him back and forth. Seeing this scene, the audience present changed their expressions. This was no longer a simple duel, but a one-sided massacre. Knocking out teeth and preventing the opponent from surrendering is simply ravaging his opponent. As the king, Viserys' face turned livid, and he got angry at the Prime Minister Leonor beside him, and scolded. Where did this Dornish barbarian come from? He has no honor or etiquette. Is he demonstrating to everyone present? Leonor wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead with a handkerchief and explained. Your Majesty, the Dornishman below is named Digga Orlans. When he signed up to participate in the competition, he expressed his great respect for you and wanted to give you a wonderful performance. That's what you call a great show. Viserys was furious. The Dornish people are never grateful. You should arrest them for theft and lock them in a water prison until they die. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Leonor lowered his head guiltily. Now I can only pray that he will end Knight Bart's life quickly and not cause too much negative impact. Do you even need to say this? Viserys snorted and ignored him. In the field, the Dornish youth was still jumping up and down, talking nonsense. I heard that there are many warriors in the valley. Why is this knight so weak? Could it be that someone took bribes to let him in? After working hard for so long, I finally signed a contract. So happy. This chapter is an additional update and will be updated normally at 4 p.m. Everyone is welcome to vote for recommendations and monthly votes. The author will add updates based on small achievements. Chapter 17 Sparking Outrage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pointing at the unconscious Bart, he sarcastically said. This knight seems to be very unfriendly to me, and he is even more discriminatory towards us, the people of Dorne. This is not right. The spear cut off one of Bart's ears, and the Dornish youth said, I heard a saying that women in the valley are not as beautiful as goats. Is this true? To be honest, I haven't experienced what it's like to be a woman in the upper valley. I don't know if they are really inferior to goats. He kicked Bart in the head and mocked, Hey, Knight of the Valley, tell me your opinion and give me some reference. Bart was bleeding profusely from multiple wounds and was dizzy. As the Dornish youth chattered on, Bart took a strong breath and twitched the corners of his lips, as if he wanted to say something. The Dornish youth knelt down, pulled his hair up, and said with a grin, If you want to speak, speak louder. Ahem, son of a bitch, Dorn, monkey. Coughing up 2 mouthfuls of blood, Bart spat bloody phlegm all over the other person's head and face, laughing and cursing weakly. Huh, damn goody lao. The filth angered the Dornish youth, but he did not kill him. A happy death is a gift. He didn't want this valley old to die so easily. The spear pierced Bart's limbs one after another, each time spinning and churning in the flesh, causing extreme pain. The torture lasted 10 full minutes. When Bart finally couldn't hold on any longer, he pierced his throat with the tip of his gun, and his pain. Damn Dornish, you will be punished. Suddenly, a curse came from the seats outside the venue, followed by an empty wine glass being thrown. With a snap, he fell into the muddy field. This scream sounded like a clarion call to vent. More and more people in the audience stood up, yelled, and threw things at the Dornish youth, wine glasses, apples, dinner plates. Even several women's high heels. Rhaegar stood in the crowd, staring expressionlessly at the Dornish youths who were dodging back and forth, mocking and laughing. as the princess of the kingdom, she had no good impression of the Dornish people. Moreover, her mother, Emma Eileen, was from the guardian family of the valley. The Dornish youth not only killed the knights of the valley who were loyal to her, but also mocked the women of the valley unscrupulously. Undoubtedly it no longer angered Rhaegar's desire to kill Cole. You go out and fight him and kill him for me. Rhaegar turned her head and gave Cole instructions. Cole looked embarrassed. I am happy to serve the princess. That Dornishman is indeed hateful. However, I am a member of the king's guard. I cannot take the initiative to enter a duel without the king's order. Then I'll find someone who can make the decision. Rhaegar threw Cole away, walked to Viserys, and lowered her voice. Father, that man is too arrogant. He is trying to bring shame on the kingdom. I can ask Cole to take action, and he will definitely avenge Bart Knight. Viserys was already furious. Although he agreed with his daughter's proposal, he still maintained his rationality and persuaded them. Wait a minute, there are many brave knights in the kingdom, and the king's guard cannot act arbitrarily. They must give young people a chance to show off. These words made sense. Rhaegar wanted to refute, but she suppressed the words that came to her lips. The contest had to continue, and Leonor spoke out to stop the audience from insulting and attacking the Dornish youth. In front of everyone, the young man from Dorne said arrogantly, "The knights in the valley are vulnerable. Are there any more powerful players? I long for real opponents, not just cowards and cowards." He laughed, as arrogant as he wanted. I come. Such a hateful guy attracted the hatred of a large number of players, and a middle-aged knight in silver-grey armor stood up. He took the initiative to walk to the competition ground, holding a long sword in his hand, and said solemnly, "My name is Saul Ballot. I come from the Stormland. Let me teach you how to be a person with awe." The Dornish youth smiled playfully. Really? I hope you will be as majestic as before, Knight of the Stormland. On the other side, the banquet area, sumptuous delicacies filled rows of dining tables, and many aristocratic women and young ladies chatted around the same table. Like a tea party, Rhaegar occupied a dining table alone, clearing a large area in front of him and placing the same pastry. Tell me what the name is. Similar to chocolate chip cookies, but with a tart shape and a sweet and chewy texture. It's so delicious. Who studied this stuff? Tasting the delicious food, Rhaegar's eyebrows curled up as he ate, so unhappy. No, I have to ask Allison when I get back which cook is so good, and ask him to make pastries for me in the future. Rhaegar thought. While he was eating, a figure suddenly sat next to him. In Rhaegar's doubtful eyes, he took a plate of chocolate pastries and put it into his mouth to chew, looking very intoxicated. Where did this person come from and why did he eat my pastries? Rhaegar cursed secretly, but didn't say much after all, since there were still several games left. However, reality taught Rhaegar a lesson: when something makes you unhappy, if you don't stop it, it will only make you more unhappy. Rhaegar had just taken a few bites when the other party was already devouring it. A plate of pastries was devoured in a blink of an eye. It tastes really good, a good cook who does his job. The other party muttered something and took away another plate of pastries without waiting for his reaction. Then the third set, the fourth set. With only the last set left, Rhaegar finally couldn't stand it anymore. Ting stood up from the chair, protected the last plate of pastries in front of him, and asked loudly, "Do you know who I am? Have you always been so brave if you dare to steal my pastries?" He speaks with great energy, but it's a pity that he is too young, not to mention the childish voice. The increasingly rounded face is also harmless, like a child playing rough. The other party scratched his curly hair in distress and said with a smile, "You are a prince, but the pastries are placed on the table just for the guests." Rhaegar became even more angry. "You know I'm a prince and you want to steal my cakes. You won't let go of the last plate. How shameless are you to compete with children for food? Well, no one is old or young when it comes to delicious food. Besides, Prince, you are just a child. Eating too much sweets will cause tooth decay. If you can't control it, just give me the pastries. I'm not afraid of tooth decay." The other party was shamelessly stubborn. "You bastard, you still want to fool me. Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child?" Rhaegar pointed at the other person and ordered Illich, "Sir, teach him a lesson, let him improve his memory." and see if he still dares to act rogue. Eric. Yes, Prince. Although he was unwilling to take action at the banquet, the other party bullied the prince because he was young, so he had to take action to maintain the prince's dignity. Illich did not draw his sword, but strode behind the opponent and stretched out his big hand to hold his shoulders. No, 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 Lord White Knight, I think there is a misunderstanding between us. I can't control it. If you mess with people you shouldn't mess with, you will have to bear certain consequences. Eric didn't have time to talk to him, so he pinched his shoulders and tried to knock him down, snapped. In the flash of lightning, an afterimage hit the back of Illich's hand, crisp and precise. Feeling the pain, Illich subconsciously let go, and a bruise appeared on the back of his hand, thanks to Bank of China for the 500 points reward. Chapter 18 Wandering Swordsman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Illich was shocked by the sudden and violent attack. When he looked up, he saw the man who had just been restrained sitting on a chair with a contented look on his face, holding a silver chopstick in his hand. White Knight, I don't mean any harm, I'm just a hungry poor man looking for something to eat. Seeing this, Rhaegar silently put down his plate and hid behind Illich. Look at the speed of the shot, you can tell he is a master, his small body can't be offended. You are so generous, your highness. Seeing the cakes, the other party smiled happily and bowed to Rhaegar. There doesn't really seem to be any malice. At this moment, Rhaegar noticed the appearance of the other party. He has curly brown hair, brown eyes, a weather-beaten face, and always maintains a smiling expression. He is very short, only 160 centimeters at most. It is normal among ordinary people, but compared with the knights who are proficient in martial arts, they are too small. Sensing Rhaegar's gaze, the other party smiled. I know your identity, but you don't seem to know who I am. Who are you? Rhaegar asked. A nobody. Rhaegar's fist hardened. He felt like he was being played. Before Rhaegar was about to get angry, the other party handed over the plate and said softly, Shirius Freer, the wandering swordsman from Bravos, is willing to share the delicious food with the prince. Rhaegar stared into his eyes, his black pupils as plain as water, unable to see through his inner thoughts. He glanced back at Illich, his eyes leading the question. Eric nodded slightly and signaled that everything would be okay. No one in the Red Keep was bold enough to assassinate the king's eldest son in public. Rhaegar picked up a piece of pastry and smiled. I am willing to share it with you, Shirley Freer. Shirley seemed to always be smiling. You can call me Shirley, but I am not a noble and I have temporarily lost my job. Oh, what did you do before? So good at swordsmanship. The opponent was very skilled and his hometown was an overseas city-state, so Rhaegar was very interested in him. We can talk while eating. I think so too. The older one and the younger one sat back in their seats, saying goodbye to the tense situation just now, and chatting over pastries. During the exchange, Rhaegar learned, Shirley was a knight's attendant when he was young. He knew how to use a sword since he was a child, and he was very good at it, but he always wanted to be an elegant dancer. A lot of effort goes into this. After he came of age, he was spotted by a big merchant in Bravos and hired as his royal dancer. I thought good times were coming. Unexpectedly, within a few years, the big businessman was assassinated. Shirley was dancing for the big businessman at the time, and unsurprisingly became the target of suspicion. In order to avoid capture, he sneaked into Westeros. Under the appreciation of a noble lady, he was brought to the Red Castle to attend the banquet. Rhaegar listened with fascination, as if immersed in Shirley's story. From time to time, I feel sorry for his unfair experience. Shirley ate and drank while lamenting the unfair fate. For a time, the two cherished each other and became each other's confidants. Of course, the above is purely from Illich's personal perspective. In fact, Lei Jia listened carefully on the surface but kept complaining in his heart. It's really rare for a dancer from Bravos to be able to master swordsmanship based on his talent. Look at Shirley's appearance again. You need height and sword skills, you need looks and sword skills. How blind must that rich man in Bravos be to hire such a short man to dance for him? Does it taste unique? You're lying in a serious way. You can't tell if you've tricked some silly girl from a noble family into sneaking into the Red Castle to eat and drink. Rhaegar smiled and said nothing, quietly watching him make up nonsense. After chatting for a while, all the chocolate pastries on the nearby table were eaten, and Shirley regretfully stopped. Langbuting mentioned the peripheral martial arts competition. "Prince, the duel outside is very exciting, don't you want to go and see it?" Rhaegar shook his head. "No, I am still too young and not used to seeing blood." Shirley smiled and said, "That's true, but the duel field was so chaotic that the king was even angry." "Because of what?" Rhaegar frowned, realizing that there was a mystery behind Shirley's words. "A Dornishman brutally killed his opponent and spoke with arrogance." Shirley took a sip of wine and said, "The Dornish people will continue to challenge, and the second duel should have just begun. Come on, let's go take a look." Rhaegar stood up immediately and walked quickly to the competition ground with Illich. Shirley smiled and followed. The three of them arrived at the competition venue and found that everyone in the audience was cheering for one person. Rhaegar found a close position and stood behind the railing to observe. A knight in silver-grey armor held a sword in both hands and swung it wildly, forcing a brown-skinned young man to retreat. Whenever the sword grazed the opponent's body, the onlookers would cheer and urge him to kill the opponent. After watching for a while, Illich whispered, "The dominant side is the Sorin Knight of Stormland, and the opponent is the Dornishman, a shameless and despicable person." Rhaegar nodded and watched the duel intently. The Shillong Knights attack fiercely, with a typical charging style. Pay attention to being quick and accurate in your attacks, crazily suppressing your opponent's actions and leaving no room for counterattack. The Dornish youth clearly saw this and took advantage of the light armor to dash left and right, dodging every attack. The spear in his hand became a shield against the long sword, and the clanging sound echoed throughout the duel field. While watching with enthusiasm, Shirley suddenly said, "The victory has been decided, and the time to change the offensive and defensive positions is not far away." Rhaegar looked at him suspiciously and asked, "Why do you say that the Knight of Shillong is very powerful?" "It is true that one is worth 10 on the battlefield, but the Dornish boy avoids fighting. We only need to delay until his physical strength weakens to win." Rhaegar looked towards the duel. If you look closely, Shillong did start to pant slightly under the repeated attacks, and it was difficult for the long sword to get closer to the opponent. On the other hand, the young men of Dorne seem to still have some strength left, and they are fighting but retreating. He did not forget to ridicule, "Sir Knight, if you mount a war horse, I will definitely not fight with you. It's a pity that you can only step in the mud with both feet. Even if there is no war horse, there is no problem in cutting off your head." Zilong's voice was hoarse and his words were full of disdain, but the sweat on his forehead betrayed his state. Rhaegar pulled the corner of Illich's clothes. "Sir, is the Knight of Shillong really going to lose?" Illich's eyes were solemn. "It's hard to say, the cunning Dornish people don't give Shillong a chance to get close to him. Silen's armor is very heavy. The longer it takes, the worse it will be for him." Shirley interrupted at the right time. "Armor can save the owner's life at critical moments, but it also limits the ingenious flexibility of the human body. Just like the Dothraki across the sea, they never wear armor and believe that agility can lead to victory on the battlefield. Keep reading, I believe in the Knight of Shillong." Rhaegar had a small face and secretly cheered for Shillong. Thanks to several book friends for their monthly votes. The author keeps his word and will continue to add another chapter today. Following the advice of book friends, the end of the previous chapter was slightly changed to reveal some of Shirley's characteristics. Shirley is an original character created by the author, inspired by Syrio, the dance teacher from Arya in Game of Thrones, mysterious, elegant and superb swordsman. Chapter 19 Prince Ranger Daemon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 19 Prince Ranger, Daemon. We'll see. Shirley folded his hands indifferently. Facts have proved that a superb swordsman's vision is vicious enough. Within 5 minutes, Shillong's frequency of swinging his sword was greatly reduced, and the pointless pursuit stopped. The Dornish youth grinned, knowing that the time had come to fight back. The same style of play as in the previous battle with Bart, changing positions around Shillong, keeping a distance and stabbing with the spear. Shillong raised his sword to defend, but there were always times when things were thick and thin. The Dornish youth made an insidious feint to seduce Shillong into attacking. At the moment when he was about to succeed, the young man from Dorne made a backhand move called Golden Rooster, which blinded one of Silen's eyes. "I admit defeat and stop the duel." Knowing that the situation was over, Shillong endured the severe pain and yelled stop in humiliation, losing his determination to continue fighting with his opponent. Bart's mistakes were too terrible, and he didn't want to follow in his footsteps. As Shillong surrendered, the Dornish youth became even more arrogant, showing off their taunts crazily and not taking the other knight seriously. He came here just to slap these nobles in the face. As for the consequences, since he dares to come, he naturally has something to rely on. On the high platform, Viserys stared horribly at the Dornish young man beating his chest with his hands, his knuckles holding the armrests of the chair turning white. Damn the Dornish, go find a mighty knight and kill him, he gave orders to Leonor. No problem, your majesty. Leonor did not dare to say anything and went backstage to find a knight who could defeat the Dornish people. There are many contestants signing up to participate in the tourney, and the Dornishmen will not be proud for long. In the corner, Rhaegar turned around with an ugly expression, not wanting to see the people in the field yelling and acting like monkeys. Don't be angry. That Dornish boy is very skilled and smart. Most people can't fight him. Shilu talked eloquently. I know that there are so many warriors in the kingdom, and the guy below will be defeated sooner or later. Rhaegar spoke firmly. Yes, every powerful warrior has his own unique way of fighting. Shilu's voice changed. If I were to face that Dornish boy, the best way would be to show weakness to the enemy, use weaknesses to allow the opponent to attack first, and seize the opportunity to defend and counterattack. Rhaegar looked at him with a strange expression. What, you want to play? A wandering swordsman will not draw his sword easily unless he finds a reasonable reason to draw his sword. Shirlu raised the corners of his mouth slightly and looked at Rhaegar meaningfully. What do you want, to apply for a job as a dance teacher at the Red Fort? Rhaegar was not surprised when the other party showed his fox tail. Shilio knelt down on one knee and said sincerely, if the prince is willing, Shilio can stay in the Red Castle as a dance teacher. Why? No reason, I thought I just did it. Rhaegar raised his eyebrows and said, this reason is not good. I don't dare to leave a dangerous person in my home. Hearing this, Shirlu pondered for a moment and replied, you are the eldest son of King Viserys I and the legal heir to the Iron Throne. Your identity and potential are worthy of my allegiance. This reason is good, but it still lacks sincerity. Rhaegar still didn't trust him and warned, one more thing, the heir to the Iron Throne is my sister. I have no intention of competing with her for that position. No one should try to sow discord between our siblings. After saying that, Rhaegar turned and walked away without even looking at Shirlu. This person appeared too suddenly, and he deliberately approached him from the beginning. Show off your extraordinary skills by grabbing cakes, and show your precise vision in the duel. All of them highlight their value to him. Unfortunately, he revealed his purpose too early. Do you really think Rhaegar is a child who doesn't understand anything? He maintains his status as being superior to others, and once his domineering aura is unleashed, people will bow to him and be willing to follow him. Low-end means and sinister intentions. If I see Shillu in the future, I will be escorted directly into the dungeon. As he walked towards Rhaenyra's position, Rhaegar complained angrily to Illich. Yes, Prince. Eric nodded in agreement, with a slightly hesitant look on his face. Seeing that he was hesitant to speak, Rhaegar asked curiously, what's the matter, sir? As the prince said, Shirlio's methods are too crude and do not match the wisdom of a superb swordsman. Illich asked doubts. Rhaegar's eyes flashed. A good swordsman is not necessarily a good bachelor. Even so, he paid a little attention. Ever since the news of his recovery spread out, the situation in King's Landing has changed. From urging Princess Rhaenyra to marry, when it comes to discussing Rhaegar's favor with the white deer, which symbolizes royal power, he has the talent of a king. I believe that it won't be too long before some ministers lose their composure and suggest that the king revoke Rhaenyra's qualification as heir and instead appoint his eldest son Rhaegar. I learned from Illich the reason why Viserys banned Rhaegar for half a year. I just don't want Rhaegar to receive too much criticism, which will affect his ambition and be bewitched by unscrupulous people. Rhaegar had no objection to this and accepted his father's kindness. Maybe it's because he's too young. Rhaegar didn't care much about his qualifications as heir to the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra had been the heir for several years, So why should he step in and steal something he didn't value? Hiss. Ga. Suddenly, a strange roar came from a distance. Rhaegar raised his head and his expression changed instantly. I saw a huge scarlet figure appearing in the sky, coming from far to near over the competition field. Sharp horns, a snake-like slender neck, wide and powerful red wings. That's a dragon, thought Rhaegar subconsciously exhaled, looking up at the flying dragon intently. The arrival of the dragon attracted more than just Rhaegar to discover. The entire audience was swept by the powerful wind whipped up by the dragon's wings, causing their hair to dance wildly and unable to open their eyes. Many ladies' skirts were accidentally blown up, which was a feast for the eyes of the gentleman next to them. The scene immediately took a turn for the worse, and the crowd screamed and shouted, trying to escape from the dragon's shadow. Quiet, this is the dragon of House Targaryen, the king is with you. Don't panic, don't run around. At this moment, a thick and powerful shout rang out, suppressing the panic in everyone's hearts. It was a strong old man with white beard and white hair, captain of the King's Guard, Harold Westling. Beside him was the king sitting firmly on the high platform. At this time, Viserys looked as usual, looking at the dragon calmly, showing off the temperament of a king. The moment they saw the king, everyone seemed to take a reassurance, and the noisy scene eased a lot. The brief panic passed, and sanity gradually returned. Many people saw the dragon's appearance clearly and exclaimed, "This dragon is Caraxio, Prince Daemon's dragon." That's right, it's Caraxio. I have fought side by side with Prince Daemon, and I will never admit my mistake. Look, there's someone on the dragon's back, it's Prince Daemon. Caraxio roared excitedly when his name was called, and red dragon flames mixed with thick black smoke were sprayed out from the dragon's kiss. With countless people watching, Caraxio circled the arena 3 times. It wasn't until the figure on the dragon's back gave the order that the giant dragon slowly landed on the duel field. As soon as Corrac landed on the ground, he looked greedily at the originally arrogant Dornish youth, stretched out his snake-like neck, and sprayed hot water from his nostrils. Respected, Prince Daemon. Facing a giant dragon that chooses people to devour, the Dornish young man was almost frightened out of his wits. Shivering and retreating, he saluted, and said hello to the people on the dragon's back in a panic. Thanks to Wanyan Sponge for the 1,600 points, thanks for the 100 points from Fearless, thanks for the 100-point reward for boating and cooking wine. Sincere thanks to all the book friends who tipped, voted, and supported the work. Note, Daemon's appearance still needs to be more serious, and the knight-errant prince cannot be left out in the cold. Chapter 20 King of the Stone Steppe Islands. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rhaegar looked into the field in the distance and saw the face of the Dragon Master, the standard silver-gold hair of the Targaryen family and violet-like pupils. Looking carefully, he has a stern face, a high nose, and an unruly look in his eyebrows, which is the same as the sitting dragon's temperament. Rhaegar had long heard the rumors among the crowd and knew who it was: his uncle, Daemon Targaryen. A knight-errant prince who dared to ride a dragon and travel across the continent when he was just a teenager, leading his followers to attack bandits. I heard that his experience was widely circulated, and some people even wrote a book and biography about him. Look! It's a giant dragon, a living dragon. It's so big that the childish nature made Rhaegar not care who Uncle Wong was. All he could see was the terrifying giant beast with scarlet scales, holding Illich's big hand. Rhaegar was extremely excited. I will also control an equally powerful dragon in the future. No. It needs to be more powerful and majestic. This dragon is too thin. At a young age, he expressed his feelings without reservation. Illich couldn't care less about looking at the dragon. He clenched the hilt of his sword and looked around cautiously, lest someone rush into the prince in panic. In the duel arena, the Dornish youth was forced into a corner by Caraxio, and he clung to the wall in fear, sweating profusely. The fear of dragons fills the heart. Just as the Dornish youth's psychological defenses are about to collapse, a calm voice came, like the sound of nature in his heart. Calacho, be honest. Hiss! Caraxio roared, seeming to respond to his master. Then he slowly raised his head, no longer paying attention to the Dornish young man who had no retreat, and he lay obediently on the ground. When the danger disappeared, the Dornish young man's legs weakened and he knelt on the ground with a bang, cold sweat dripping down his cheeks. Daemon jumped off the dragon's back and strode towards the viewing platform, looking at the people behind him as if they were nothing. Without daring to stop his steps, Daemon walked step by step to Viserys' seat. "Stop, no one can offend the king's majesty." Captain Harold of the King's Guard drew his sword from its scabbard and pointed the tip of the sword at Daemon's chest. Daemon glanced at him and ignored him, his expression cold. Viserys remained motionless, eyes as deep as the sea, looking at his former brother. Daemon was also watching him, neither of them spoke, and the scene became serious for a moment. The nearby princes and ministers looked nervous, wondering how the two brothers would meet. After a moment of silence, Daemon consciously took a step back to dispel Hadro's vigilance. Then, he took out a double-edged axe from his waist, threw it in front of Viserys, raised his head and said, "Add it to the Iron Throne." Viserys was unmoved, looked at Daemon's head, and said in a deep voice, "You wear the crown, do you also call yourself the king?" As soon as the Three Women's Kingdom was conquered, people called me the King of the Narrow Sea. Daemon recounted his achievements, paused and said, "But I know, your majesty. There is only one king in the world." With that said, Daemon knelt down on one knee, took off the vine crown on his head, and lowered his noble head. "My crown and the Stone Step Islands belong to you." These words and deeds greatly exceeded the expectations of everyone present, who would have expected that Prince Daemon, who had always been aloof and arrogant, would take the initiative to surrender and give his brother the respect and dignity he deserved as a king. Looking down at his sensible brother, Viserys was not impatient and asked, "Where is Lord Corlys?" "He set sail back to his hometown on Chowtu Island." Daemon answered truthfully. Viserys continued, "Who now guards the stepstones?" "The tide, the crabs, and the 2,000 pirates of the Three Women Kingdom who were nailed to the beach for their lives as a warning to others." Daemon responded to his brother's inquiry with a low voice. He knew that this answer was important to his brother. After receiving an unsatisfactory answer, Viserys pondered for a moment, then nodded as if looking away. Viserys stood up and stepped forward, first taking the vine crown from Daemon Harvest. After looking at it casually, he handed it to Captain Harold. It was obvious that he looked down upon this crown that symbolized the King of the Narrow Sea. Noticing the expressions of the princes and ministers around him, Viserys' eyes flickered and he said calmly, "Get up." Daemon looked at his brother expectantly, and upon hearing the signal of forgiveness, he slowly stood up tall. Viserys' indifferent expression melted away like ice, and he smiled, "Welcome home, brother." Without hesitation, Daemon and Viserys embraced each other. In full view of the public, the bloodline of Prince Baelren of Spring Dawn was reunited again. Those who are interested understand that this is some kind of warning issued by the king. He welcomes the return of his younger brother Daemon, but that doesn't mean some people can make a big fuss out of it. Daemon knows this too, therefore, his attitude was very respectful from beginning to end, and he no longer followed his usual free will. Rhaegar stood in front of everyone and watched this complex power game at close range, with unconcealable joy in her eyes. Her clear and stupid purple pupils still couldn't tell what was real and what was fake, just a heartfelt joy to have uncle come home. Sister. At some point Rhaegar squeezed out of the crowd, came to Rhaegar, and took her little hand. Hearing his call, Rhaegar discovered Rhaegar's existence and said with a smile, "Uncle Daemon is back. He has been very good to me since I was a child." "Yes, he looks handsome." Facing his sister's joy, Rhaegar forced out a smile and complimented Daemon's handsome face, because he really didn't know which kind of excellent quality should match up with this uncle who had never been masked before. Although he rarely heard information from the outside, he also knew that the name Crown Prince for a day came from this uncle's mouth. He was hoping that Rhaegar would die young so that he could inherit the Iron Throne from Viserys. Let me ask, how could Rhaegar like him? With the appearance of Daemon riding the dragon, the two brothers reconciled. The day's martial arts tournament came to a hasty conclusion, and the officials were organized to move to the banquet area to greet Daemon. As for a young Dornish boy whose pants were soaked, he was softly invited by Prime Minister Leonor to stay at a high-end hotel in the city. Not only did they pay the accommodation fee, but they also sent someone to take care of him, for fear that he would not be used to living there. The scene was quite grand, and many trustworthy people inquired about it. The answers were very consistent. The king admired this Dornish warrior who had come all the way, and today he first received the victorious king's brother Daemon. The martial arts tournament will start tomorrow, and he is invited to continue participating in the duel, don't refuse. A feast was always prepared, and Viserys walked side by side with Daemon. Behind him were a group of ministers and invited nobles and lords. It has to be said that Alysanne is an understanding queen. After receiving the news of Daemon's return, he immediately ordered the servants to remove the meals they had eaten and replace them with dishes already stocked in the kitchen. When Viserys brought people to the banquet area, everything was in order, and there was no sense of imperfection as a temporary arrangement. Viserys was greatly moved and publicly praised Alysanne as his good wife who always shared important tasks for him. Alysanne held Viserys' arm unfazed, and said gently, "You have been busy with government affairs all day long. You have already worked very hard. You shouldn't worry about trivial matters." Holding the queen's slender green-white hand, Viserys' eyes were full of joy. "Thanks to you, my life will not be so lonely." "Okay, I was laughed at by the ministers for being intimate. Let's bring people to the banquet." Alysanne's cheeks were flushed, and his shy appearance was delicious. The Stepstone Islands are a troubled place, implying a struggle for power.